Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz joins me. Nice to see you, sir.
Good. Can I correct something you said? You said that the woman in 2006 who said that
96, wasn't it? But anyway, go ahead.
Was vindicated. She wasn't vindicated. This is Maria. She is a complete and total nut. She believes the Holocaust didn't occur. She thinks Jews control the world. She thinks that all Jews are pedophiles. Of course the FBI didn't believe her in 1996. Nobody would believe her. She's a complete nutcase, except to CNN. CNN has her on every day. Never.
And apparently to me, because I took the bait too. Apparently to me as well.
Maria Farmer understand. Maria Farmer said she saw me once in Jeffrey Epstein's house before I ever met Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, she sees ghosts. This is a completely non-credible nutcase that nobody should believe. Just because it's in the files doesn't make it true. I'm sure the FBI looked into it and said, oh my God, this woman making a claim, what she said about Jews, what she said about people, of course we're not going to believe her. This is pure McCarthyism, the same thing that happened when I was in college in the 1950s. Accusations, yeah, we'll make accusations, but the same women, the same, what do they call themselves, survivors, who claim that they want transparency for thee, but not for me. They don't want transparency about the women who themselves were procuring young girls for Jeffrey Epstein and getting paid $250. They don't want that kind of transparency. They don't want transparency about women who collected $50,000 having not met Jeffrey Epstein ever in their life. What we want is total transparency. You can't have just the accusations.
Why can't we get total transparency? I mean, I'm all for that too. I mean, because we've now gotten ourselves down. We've got ourselves down the road far enough in this Epstein thing. I mean, why? You know, what's the objection to really full transparency instead of all those blacked out pages?
Is that a lot of these women who call themselves survivors, who call themselves victims, a lot of them were perpetrators, perjurers, liars. Lawyers got rich over this. That doesn't suggest that Epstein didn't do terrible things. There are real victims, but the real victims suffer from the Sarah Ransoms of the world who claim she had videotapes of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump having sex with children, Richard Branson, and then she has to admit she made the whole thing up. She doesn't have videotape. This is
But that's all the more reason for, I mean, what you say is for a complete transparency and not sort of cherry pick what you want to be transparent and not.
Partial transparency. That's what Joseph McCarthy did. He used to stand on the floor of the Senate and say, I have a list. I have a list of names. But he wouldn't give any information about the accusers. He wouldn't give the people who are accused the opportunity to defend themselves. This is bipartisan McCarthyism. Why? Because no congressman, senator, and except for you and a few other people, no member of the media is prepared to get up and say, I doubt the words of these accusers. I doubt the words of these victims. I doubt the words of these survivors, because they'll be called.
But okay, you and I mean, you know, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing I want more than to get it right. But I mean, it's so easy to get it wrong. I mean, you're telling me that I got it wrong about this woman. I mean, how do I know that? You know, unless I have full transparency. How do I learn that? Except for I'm lucky enough to have, you know, booked you.
Look, I know more about this case probably than any person around. I've been investigating this case since I became Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer in the 2006 or something like that. And what he did was terrible, but what many of these women did was terrible. Many of these women, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 23-year-olds, were making $250 a shot for bringing 14-year-olds to Jeffrey Epstein for sex. Let's prosecute them. They're within the statute of limitations. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean you're not a pimp, doesn't mean doesn't mean you're not a procurer. We cannot be protecting these people. They are guilty.
I'm not in favor of protecting anybody, which is why I go back to let's have full transparency instead of having all these blacked out pages. Because we don't have transparency unless we have full transparency, because people take things and run with it.
Lawyers who went to these women and said, didn't you have sex with Epstein? If you did, you can collect $50,000 and I'll get $20,000 of it. There are a lot of complicit lawyers here too.
Well, who did that? I mean, that's very bad too. I mean, who are these lawyers?
I can tell you, I can give you names of lawyers. I can tell you who they are. There's a whole group of lawyers who have encouraged these women to come forward with false stories. Sarah Ransom is somebody who created a whole industry around herself. And there are others as well. I can give you lists of names of people, lawyers and people who've come forward with these false stories. Now, let's, for example, look at the letter that Epstein apparently wrote to Nasser. Has anybody checked his handwriting? I actually checked his signature. It doesn't look like his signature. This doesn't seem like a valid letter. Why would Jeffrey Epstein write a letter in advance of committing suicide that he had every reason to believe the authorities would open and look at and prevent him from committing suicide? It's very suspicious. So Donald Trump is right when he says, look at these disclosures. We're disclosing, but look at them with a critical eye and don't.
Well, that also, in addition to looking at the disclosures, we've got to have it all. I mean, it's like, just having a little piece of it is not a disclosure.
And then when you disclose everything, then we can look at every piece of evidence. We can see whether they're valid. We can do investigations into the backgrounds of some of these accusers and find out whether they falsely accused other people. That's become an industry, accusing people. That's McCarthyism. This is modern day McCarthyism. Look, there was really communism, and it was a terrible thing when the Soviet Union was trying to take over the world. And so Joseph McCarthy had a real target. And there really is sexual abuse, and Jeffrey Epstein was a terrible sexual abuser. But that doesn't mean you can use that as an excuse to go after totally innocent people. And that's what McCarthyism did. And that's what this form of new McCarthyism is doing.
I don't know where everybody's. I don't know if we're at that stage. Everyone's saying a lot of really awful things about everybody at this point. But the problem is that we have no universe of facts from which to make reasonable opinions and determine facts when we only get half the material is blacked out.
Where is anybody looking into this from an objective point of view? The same thing happened with McCarthyism. You couldn't get a liberal, you couldn't get a conservative, you couldn't get the ACLU, you couldn't get anybody because they'd be called communist sympathizers, commie simps. The same thing is true today. If you dare to suggest that some of these alleged victims and survivors are phonies and they're making up stories for their own, lining their own pocket, you're called a victim shamer and you're called an Epstein supporter. Well, I'm prepared to take that on. Where's the ACLU? They're supposed to defend civil liberties. The ACLU is supposed to say that if you're accused, you have a Sixth Amendment right to defend yourself. If you're accused, you have a right to know the name of your accused. Where are they? Where are the liberals in the Senate and the House? They are ashamed. They're afraid. They have no courage. They won't stand up to this new form of McCarthyism. In 10 years, this will go down in history as the second worst form of McCarthyism in our nation's history. The first was Joseph McCarthy himself, and the second is this new Epstein McCarthyism. Out there, if you want to win a Pulitzer Prize, go and do this. Do the investigation. Nobody else is doing it.
And then we go back to where I started, is that even knowing him or being on a plane with him doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, which is where this is. This is so blown up. Knowing Jeffrey Epstein is not a crime.
Well, that was the same thing with McCarthyism. If you were in a class with a communist, if you went to a party with a communist, if you dated a communist, you must be a communist and you lose your job. The first thing about McCarthyism was guilt by association. The second was guilt by accusation. The third was going after the lawyers, which of course they've done as well. So every element of the old McCarthyism is now in the new Epstein McCarthyism. History will take real concerns about what's going on in this country today, and terrible precedents are being established. Hard cases make bad law, and bad people make bad precedents, which are ultimately applied to good people. And that's what's happening today.
And as full disclosure, I know a lot about McCarthyism, but we'll leave that for another day. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.